everybody, and welcome back. Hope you're having a wonderful weekend. It is Sunday, January 15th, so already halfway through January, and it has been a crazy start to 2023 for us here, as we've already dealt with rounds of these storms moving their way across the country, and that will continue going into this week as we deal with another storm in the middle of the week that will once again produce severe weather and winter weather. And then after that, we're looking at a pattern change, and I think there will be a section of the country that's likely going to get clobbered over and over as the jet stream will likely continue to bring these rounds of storms and overlapping the same area multiple times. I think that is a very likely scenario here through the end of January, so we will discuss that. But before we do that, I just want to say thank you. Now that the weather's kind of calmed down a little bit since December, the views on a lot of these weather platforms on YouTube has gone down some. And I just want to thank those of you that are watching this video, because that means, you're here for the long haul. Even if there isn't absolute insane weather ongoing, you're still here watching. So if that's you, let me know in the comments. And it really does mean the world, especially those of you that engage in my videos, those of you that comment daily. Absolutely love seeing those comments. And I really want to build a bit of a community here and a family-like atmosphere on this channel. I was talking to somebody about this. I want you to kind of watch these videos, not just because you want to get the weather forecast, but just because you want to be a part of this community that we have here. And that's something I'm really big on. So, let me know what your name is, where you're watching from, and let's continue to go ahead and grow this community. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it because we have a lot to talk about. So looking at satellite here, this is that, southern New England storm we've been talking about that is really helping to bring some of that snow and sleet into the northeast. And then out here in the plains, you notice we have our next system getting going. This one likely won't bring huge impacts for us here in the east, but what it will do is kind of set the stage for that next bigger storm that will move through going into Thursday of this week. So looking at our current hazards here, we do have some freeze warnings still here into Florida. It's actually been quite a cold weekend here across the east. And I'll show you tonight's low temperatures, which I think is a very interesting chart because it'll be a lot colder in sections of Florida than it will be areas pretty far north tonight. I'll show you that in a second. But, we still have these ongoing advisories into the northeast with those winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings, and then out here into the plains with these wind advisories for that system that is currently cranking out here in the plains, and also some red flag warnings here into the panhandles of Texas and Oklahoma due to that system. So these are tonight's low temperatures. Again, I think this is just such a wild chart. It'll be colder tonight likely in Jacksonville, Florida, and even down near Orlando than it will be in a place like Green Bay, Wisconsin. So that is just something crazy to look at, I think. So if you're in the South here in Georgia, Florida, go ahead and brag to any family you have out in the plains. Say, hey, you're always complaining about the cold, but guess what? It's colder here tonight than it is where you live. So that's just something kind of fun to look at. But, cold temperatures tonight in the east. And then we're getting this warm up here into the plains due to that system here that is cranking up that warm Gulf air into the plains tonight. And that will then work its way further east tomorrow. So we will have pretty, average to above average temperatures here tomorrow. 50s and 60s here into the southeast and mid-Atlantic. And then look at this, 80s here into sections of Texas tomorrow. But nonetheless, a pretty nice warm sector of air getting lifted northward here due to that system cranking over the plains that will move east going into the start of this week. So that's Monday's high temperatures. Tuesday, similar story, pretty warm here in the south. And then, progressively getting cooler the further north you get. Go ahead and just, pick your town or your location on this map. And you can see what your high temperature will likely be on Tuesday here. So go ahead and pause the video if you need a bit longer to look at that. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of this New England snow we've been talking about. This has been one of those systems that some of the models kind of really just latched on at the last second, showing that snow potential here, especially into sections here of southeastern Massachusetts, from the Boston metro out through the Cape. So we'll go ahead and bring this out ahead into time here. Already getting that snow falling likely in places like Boston, even most of Rhode Island, and down into the Cape and out towards Nantucket. As we go through tonight, this will continue to go on, and we'll get kind of, I think, some of these enhanced areas of snowfall due to kind of this lake effect, or ocean effect, I should say, moisture coming on shore here due to the flow from this wind. But as we get into the overnight, this should become a bit more scattered in nature. before getting into tomorrow morning. Look at this big batch of moisture coming into sections of Maine. Likely pretty good sleet from a lot of this into a big section of Maine into the overnight. And then once we get into tomorrow morning, still dealing with these rounds of snow down here into sections of Massachusetts. So, we'll watch for that. And that will begin to finally clear out as we get into tomorrow afternoon, just that moisture left over into sections of Maine where we could have a sleet and freezing rain threat there as we get kind of that warm Atlantic Ocean air to override those cooler temperatures at the surface, causing some icing concerns up there. And you see that continues to linger going into Monday night before becoming more scattered in nature as we get into Tuesday. That's whenever we get this next lighter system to move through the region there. So looking at some of these totals here, widespread 3 to 5 inches I think is a pretty safe bet here into sections of Massachusetts. Up into Maine, a lot of this will likely fall as sleet, especially into eastern Maine. So I think the areas that can stay snow longer, could hit 3 inches, but a lot of this is accounting sleet and not, I guess adding that up correctly. So a lot of this will be sleet into Maine, but nonetheless, still accumulations of some snow there, including all of that sleet. All right, so going ahead and looking at this week now, and looking at this next system that is going to honestly be very similar to the system we were dealing with last week in terms of how dynamic it will be with that severe weather to the south and those winter storm conditions to the north. So start with our GFS model like we always do here. A pleasant start to the week for Monday for your MLK Day for much of the east, but once we get into Tuesday, we get that system that's currently in the plains to help bring some rain and precipitation here into these. I don't expect this to be too big of a deal, but nonetheless, kind of cloudy, rainy weather for a lot of us on Tuesday. This is Tuesday morning here. And going into Tuesday afternoon, a lot of this will be moving through the mid-Atlantic and northeast. But once we get into Wednesday, that's whenever we start dealing with this next bigger system here. As you can tell, this is really going to bring a good amount of snow to a lot of us in the plains, and it's going to make quite the good path here to set up some of this precipitation here into the plains and into the northeast. So as we continue to get through the week here, you see snow here on the north side of this, and then we'll deal with those storms here on the southern end of this that will likely produce some of those severe storms into sections of Texas and Louisiana going into Wednesday. So as we get into Thursday, though, it won't be nearly as widespread, the rain with this system, I think, especially to the south side as it was last week, especially with that severe weather we were dealing with. But I do think the snow threat will be higher with this one compared to last week's storm, especially here on the north side of this. I think a lot of places in Wisconsin, Michigan, and up into upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine could get some snow out of this. You see, as we move this ahead, again, some rain to deal with nonetheless, but once we get into Friday, we will get some of that snow on the north end of this into areas of New England before that finally clears out going into next weekend. All right, looking at our Euro model now. Again, similar picture, some rainy conditions for Tuesday for much of us, but that will just set the stage for this next bigger system going into Wednesday. Again, I expect some pretty heavy snow here into sections of the plains from this system. And then as we move this ahead in time on the Euro, you see that band of snow continues to the north side of this. Euro's a bit more bullish here on storms continuing on the southern side of this system. So we'll watch that and kind of see which model kind of wins this battle as we get into the coming days. But, again, very heavy band of snow on the north side of this. This is for Thursday afternoon here. So, again, Wisconsin, Michigan, I think those areas really could see pretty hefty amount of snow out of this. And then that moves into upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine going into your Thursday night and Friday. And then the Euro here kind of does some phasing here and gets another low going on the coast. So we'll watch that to see if maybe we can get some enhanced moisture here into sections of New England before once again we clear out going into next weekend. So we'll go ahead and talk about that severe weather threat first. You can see the Storm Prediction Center here. This is for next Wednesday. And we talked about this in yesterday's video, but has that threat lined up for places like Jackson, Mississippi, Shreveport, Louisiana, and into eastern sections of Texas. So let's go ahead and look at some of those ingredients we're working with here. So this is for next Wednesday. You see, we get some of that cape or that instability to build into these areas here, and that will help fuel these storms and allow them to produce some of that severe weather. Something else we are also working with here is some wind shear. So these areas where that cape and that wind shear overlap could definitely cause some of those severe storms to fire into Wednesday, and with likely tornadoes on the table, strong winds, and maybe even some hail with these storms. We'll watch to see if we have more of a linear mode or a discrete storm threat, but either way, I think all threats will be on the table. And once we get into the coming days, especially into tomorrow and Tuesday, we'll have a better idea of what kind of threats we're dealing with in terms of straight line wind versus tornadoes. So either way, even if you don't see the severe storms out of this, you will be seeing some rain. I think the bullseye for rain here will likely be here into the Tennessee and Ohio River valleys, getting, 1 to 2 inches of rain out of this. Some places maybe even more than 3 inches. So, quite a rainy week ahead. That's been a pretty common trend here for this month so far, it has felt like, and we'll watch that continue with this next system. So something I want to talk about here with this new pattern, this jet stream that is setting up, I do think a lot of these areas will likely get rounds of these storms to form, and a lot of the same places will likely get clobbered with some of the same kind of conditions over and over again as this pattern kind of begins to set itself into place. So as we move this ahead into this week, you see the jet stream here kind of setting up this shape where these circles here indicating storm or a storm. And I want you to watch this general track that they take. So this is that storm for next week. You can see kind of moves through. And then after that, we kind of get another storm to move through some of the same general areas. So I think we're kind of going to get the jet stream to make this kind of general storm track. So a lot of areas in here are going to get likely a lot of snow, I think, over the next 5 to 14 days as this pattern sets up and kind of locks itself in stone. We see this a lot of the times where these storms will take the same track over and over and over, causing areas to get the same general weather for an extended period of time. So we'll take a look at that here with our snowfall model, and you can see how the totals kind of add up over the same areas over and over. So as you can see with the storm next week, you see this, snow developing here, and we get kind of this band of snow from the plains up into the Great Lakes and into the Northeast. And then as this continues to go ahead, you see those totals build as we get maybe another storm, and that just continues to build into the same general places throughout the next 10 days. So I think that's a pattern that will likely set up, and this doesn't necessarily mean it will be exactly here. This could shift further to the east, maybe places like this getting in on some of that snow. It could shift further to the west or north, maybe places like this getting in on that snow. But nonetheless, I do think certain areas will likely get locked into this pattern and have to deal with this continual rounds of these storms. So another way to look at that here, and looking at the long range as well, is with our height anomalies, or showing where we think those storm tracks will line up. So going into this week, you see this big area of blue here into the center of the country. That will be the storm we will be dealing with going through this week. And then after that, going longer term, you see kind of these blues continue into those same general areas. This is with the GFS ensembles, I should add. Before getting into the really long term, you see kind of the lower 48 as a whole getting in on some of this cooler, stormier weather, as this jet stream here kind of setting up like this on the GFS. So, you'd get these continual rounds of precipitation here, bringing potentially snow through the Midwest. So that's the GFS ensembles, and, going further long range, the GFS kind of brings that cooler, stormy weather back out west and continues those warm conditions here into the southeast. Looking at the Euro ensembles, a bit of a different story, although relatively similar here. I'm going to actually refresh this page real quick, sorry. But, moving this forward, this is that storm we are dealing with this week. You see it kind of takes this general track here. And then as we go further ahead in time, you continue to get those blues to work through those same general areas long term. And then once we get into the longer kind of range, you see the Euro ensemble setting up that colder weather here right into the lower 48 with that jet stream doing something like this. So that's going to bring a lot of close calls for us here into the northeast and even the southeast, I think, where even potentially there could be snow falling in areas like this. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see some snowstorms working their way through this area over and over while there's rain closer to the coast. But whoever gets the snow, I think, is going to get rounds of it. That could move further this way. It could move further this way. Either way, I think areas are going to continue to get slammed with this kind of continual rounds of storms. You see that pattern really lock in here. You see these areas continue to be locked into that blue, and with that storm track likely getting big bands of these snowstorms to work through going through the end of January. So what does that translate here in terms of temperature? You can see the Climate Prediction Center showing these warmer temperatures here in the east and colder temperatures out west. And what that also says is that we'll get this general storm track to work kind of like this, getting the snow on this side and then the warmer conditions on the south and eastern side of these storms. Another way to look at that is with precipitation here. And again, with this active storm track likely getting just above average precipitation across the entire east coast and central half of the country going through the end of January. So very active pattern setting up here for us, including, again, these rounds of storms working their way through. And we'll have to watch to see what part of the country will get that continual round of snow to work through, and other places dealing with rain and maybe even severe weather. But that is all I've got for today's video. Again, let me know where you're watching from. I really want to continue to build this family-like community here and kind of really, I guess, get to know each other as friends and not just people who, are here interacting on the internet, I guess. But anyway, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all tomorrow.